Let's crack the code on Boeing's second quarter 2024 report. What's your first impression? What jumped out at you?
One thing is clear, Boeing is hyper-focused on recovery, especially with that Alaska accident back in January. Safety and quality, those are their top priorities now, even if it means pumping the brakes on production to get things right.
It's a tough situation. They're walking a tightrope, trying to reassure everyone that their planes are safe, while also trying to keep up with demand from airlines.
Exactly. It's a real balancing act. It's like they're rebuilding trust while also sprinting to catch up in a very competitive industry.
So how are they actually tackling this? Did they give any specifics about their plan?
They did. They're implementing something called key performance indicators, or KPIs, across the board. Think of them as benchmarks, measuring everything from how skilled their employees are to how smoothly their supply chains are running. They even track those little imperfections that can pop up in manufacturing.
So it's not just about speed anymore, it's about precision.
You got it. And it seems to be working. They highlighted a major improvement in quality from one of their main suppliers, Spirit AeroSystems. They tripled the number of inspectors overseeing the production of those fuselages.
Wow, tripling the inspectors, that's a statement. It shows they're dead serious about getting it right. And speaking of Spirit AeroSystems, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, Boeing buying them out. That's a massive move. It sounds like they're bringing a critical part of their manufacturing back under their control.
It's a huge shift in strategy. By bringing Spirit AeroSystems back into the fold, Boeing wants to streamline everything, making sure everyone's on the same page when it comes to safety and quality.
So it's all about regaining control, ensuring those planes are built to the highest possible standard. But let's be real, a massive acquisition like this has to have some serious financial implications. So let's talk numbers. What's the financial picture looking like?
Well, their report did mention a loss for the second quarter.
Oh, that doesn't sound great.
But hold on, there's more to the story. Despite the challenges in this restructuring, demand for new planes is actually surging.
So they're playing the long game here, taking a hit now, but betting on future demand.
Precisely. Think of it as a short-term pain for long-term gain. Now, they are facing some headwinds like slower delivery rates. Remember, that focus on quality takes time? And then there's the issue of rising production costs, particularly in their defense programs.
It's fascinating how everything's connected, isn't it? One little delay can snowball into a much bigger issue.
Exactly. And it's not just about production targets. It's about the relationship with the airlines. They're the ones waiting for those shiny new planes.
Right, because a plane on the ground is a plane that's not making money. So how's that all playing out?
Well, Boeing admitted these delays are causing some tension. Some airlines are getting cold feet, hesitant to make those big down payments until they see improvements in delivery schedules. Understandable, right?
Absolutely. Time is money, especially in the airline industry. But even with all these hurdles, Boeing is still pushing ahead with their new aircraft programs, like the 737 MAX 7 and 10, the Dreamliner, and that futuristic 777X.
It shows they're thinking long-term. Despite the hiccups, they're investing heavily in innovation, hoping these new aircraft programs will solidify their position as a leader in aviation. It's a gamble.
It is, but a calculated one, a high-risk, high-reward situation. So any exciting updates on these new programs?
Well, there was one interesting bit about the 777X. They received what's called type inspection authorization. Essentially, the FAA gave the thumbs up on the 7779's design.
So it's one step closer to reality, even with a few bumps along the way. It's a good reminder that even with the challenges, Boeing is still capable of achieving some pretty incredible things.
Right. It shows their resilience, their commitment to pushing the boundaries of what's possible in aviation. But there's another side to this earnings call we haven't even touched on. What does this all mean for the everyday traveler, like you and me?
That's a great point. We've talked about production hiccups, supply chain issues, ambitious new planes. But what does it all boil down to for someone booking a flight, packing their bags, getting ready for a trip?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's one we'll tackle right after we take a quick break. Stay tuned.
So we've talked about the big picture for Boeing, their hurdles, and what they're hoping for down the line. But let's bring this back down to earth for a second. What do all these corporate growing pains actually mean for the average person hopping on a plane? Are we the ones who are going to feel the turbulence, so to speak?
That's the million-dollar question, right? It's tough to say for sure whether this means pricier plane tickets or more delays. But here's the thing. A healthy Boeing, a company that's firing on all cylinders, that's good for everyone. When they stumble, the whole industry feels the tremors.
It's like dropping a pebble in a pond, those ripples, they just keep spreading. Can you give us a real-world example of how these problems might actually trickle down to passengers?
Absolutely. Remember those new fuel-efficient planes Boeing's trying to get off the ground? Yeah, well, until those are ready to fly, airlines are stuck using their older, less efficient aircraft.
And those older planes, they guzzle gas, which means
Higher costs, and you know who ends up footing the bill?
passengers, whether it's through those sneaky fuel surcharges or just straight up more expensive tickets.
Bingo! Basic economics. And don't forget, some airlines are getting skittish about paying Boeing up front for new planes because of all these delays. That puts a financial strain on them. And that can impact everything from which routes they fly to what kind of snacks they can offer on board.
It's amazing how interconnected everything is, a tangled web of factors. Makes you realize that what happens in Boeing's boardroom can have a real impact on someone's travel experience thousands of miles away.
You said it. And we haven't even touched on the potential impact on jobs, the economy as a whole. Boeing is a massive employer, not just directly, but through all their suppliers too. When their operations hit a snag, it can have a ripple effect on businesses and communities all over.
It really underscores how vital the aviation industry is to the global economy.
No doubt, but let's not get too bogged down in the doom and gloom. Boeing is taking steps to right the ship. They're pouring money into quality control, trying to make their production process smoother, and being more upfront with both their customers and investors.
Like a mid-flight course correction.
Exactly. But let's circle back to those new aircraft programs. Any other notable updates beyond what we discussed about the 777X? What about the 787 Dreamliner?
Ah, the Dreamliner. It's a beauty. What's the latest?
Well, they did mention it, and it seems like they've hit some turbulence on that front, too. They're wrestling with, you guessed it, supply chain problems.
Those supply chain woes, they're like a plague these days. Even giants like Boeing can't escape.
It's a good reminder that even with the best laid plans, sometimes those external factors can throw a wrench in the works. But speaking of wrenches, let's shift gears for a minute and talk about a different part of Boeing's business, their defense contracts.
Right. They're a major player in that arena, too.
Huge. Fighter jets, those flying gas stations, what are they called? Refueling tankers, even spacecraft. They're essential for national security and global defense. But it seems like even that part of their business is facing some headwinds.
Oh, really? Tell me more. What kind of challenges are we talking about?
Well, they're dealing with these things called fixed price development programs. Basically, it means Boeing takes on a lot of the financial risk if a project goes over budget.
So they agree on a price, and if it ends up costing more, that's on them.
Exactly. It can be risky, especially with complex projects. They mentioned the T-7A trainer jet, those new Air Force One replacements, the VC-25Bs, and even NASA's Commercial Crew program as being particularly tough.
Wow, those are some high-profile projects to have issues with. Makes you wonder, is this a sign of something bigger going wrong within Boeing's defense division, or just a few isolated bumps in the road?
It's a question a lot of analysts are asking. It's worth noting that Boeing knows about these challenges, and they say they're learning from these fixed-price contracts, applying those lessons to future projects.
So no more blank checks for the Pentagon. They're going to be a little more careful about which projects they take on.
Exactly. It's all about finding that sweet spot. Secure those big contracts, but also make sure they can actually deliver without breaking the bank.
It's a balancing act, that's for sure. But hey, amidst all this talk about challenges, there's one bright spot in Boeing's portfolio we haven't touched on yet.
Oh, you mean their global services division?
Right. Tell us more. A little good news would be a nice change of pace.
Well, you see, Boeing doesn't just build planes, they also help keep existing planes in the air.
Their global services division. They handle all that maintenance, repairs, keeping those planes in tip-top shape for airlines and governments around the world.
You got it. It's easy to overlook that part of their business, but it's vital for keeping the skies safe and those planes flying.
Absolutely, and I bet it's a nice steady stream of revenue for Boeing, too.
You know it. In the earnings call, they highlighted strong margins and revenue growth in this division. That's reassuring, especially with the turbulence they're experiencing elsewhere.
So it's like a steady engine, keeping the whole plane aloft, even when there's a bit of turbulence.
Perfect analogy. It shows how important it is to have a diverse business. When one area is struggling, another one can pick up the slack.
Balance, right?
Yeah.
Balance between pushing the envelope with innovation and actually delivering on those promises. Yeah. And through it all, making sure that people feel confident about getting on a plane.
Well said. Which brings us to the heart of it all. Can Boeing get back on track? Can they overcome these obstacles and continue to be a major force in shaping the future of air travel?
It's a question with huge implications, and one we'll keep exploring as we wrap up this episode of the Deep Dive. So where does this leave us? We've covered a lot of ground: production setbacks, supply chain headaches, those big defense contracts, even how it all trickles down to the everyday traveler. What's the final word on Boeing? Are they going to pull through?
You know, I wouldn't start bracing for impact just yet. Remember that strong demand for new aircraft we talked about? That's a huge positive for Boeing. People are itching to travel. Businesses need those air freight lines humming. That's not going anywhere anytime soon.
It's like that old saying, the only cure for high prices is high prices. As long as those seats are full and tickets are selling, airlines need planes, and that plays right into Boeing's hands.
Exactly. And it's not just about demand. Boeing's got a few more tricks up their sleeve. They're investing a ton in innovation, always pushing the envelope with lighter materials, those super efficient engines, even dipping their toes into things like sustainable aviation fuel.
They're not just trying to keep up, they're trying to set the pace.
Exactly. And let's not forget their global services division, that steady, reliable income stream. It's like having a solid foundation to build on while they weather this storm.
A bit like a diversified investment portfolio. When one sector takes a hit, the others can balance things out.
Spot on. But it's not all blue skies and tailwinds just yet. For Boeing to really leverage these advantages, they need to get a grip on those production delays, solidify those supply lines, and win back the trust of their customers and investors.
It sounds like they've got a lot of balls in the air right now, hoping none of them drop.
That's a great way to put it. And the pressure's on. The aerospace industry, it's cutthroat. Airbus, their European competitor, they're always right there, ready to pounce on any misstep. Boeing can't afford to sputter for too long.